and he was buried in the same Jewish cemetery in Savannah that he himself had founded many years before. So the Sheftel Cemetery was named for his generosity, reflecting his determination to build a Jewish community in his beloved hometown in a free United States of America that this patriot had done so much to help create. And I thought that it would be important and meaningful to us to think about this. And of course, many other heroes over the years who have done so much for the United States of America, and for us to appreciate the freedom that we have in so many different ways. And as we say, God bless America. Now, this coming Thursday on the Jewish calendar is the 12th day of Tammuz, and I'd like to share the remainder of our program on this subject and the significance of this coming Thursday. This is the day in 1880 when the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson of Lubavitch, was born. This is also the day, on the very same day, in which he was liberated from exile to the Soviet Gulag 47 years later. It was on this day in 1927 when the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe was officially granted release from his sentence of exile to Kostroma in the interior of Russia. 27 days earlier, the Rebbe had been arrested by the agents of the GPU, which is the NKVD, which is the Russian secret police, and for his activities. Why was he arrested? Because his activities to preserve Judaism throughout the Soviet Empire, and he was sentenced to death, God forbid. International pressure was forced the Soviets to commute this sentence and turn it into exile, and then he was subsequently released completely. So the actual release took place on the 13th, which will be this coming Friday, but both days, the day that he was announced and the office was closed, and therefore didn't leave until the next day. But this coming Thursday and Friday is celebrated as what is called a Festival of Liberation by the Chabad Lubavitch community. And Oza has pointed out that he actually was released on the 12th day of Tammuz, which also is his Jewish birthday. So here was the 6th Rebbe of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, one of the most remarkable Jewish personalities in the 20th century. In his 70 years, he encountered every conceivable challenge in Jewish life. The persecutions of the pogroms of the Tsarist Russia, communism's war on Judaism, and then he came to the United States in 1940, and then he had to deal with the melting pot of America's apathy and the scorn at that time towards Torah and its precepts. The previous Rebbe, was unique in that he not only experienced these chapters in Jewish history, as did many of his generation, but in fact, as a leader of his people, he actually faced them down, often single-handedly, and he prevailed. In 1897, at the age of 17, he married his Nechamadina, the daughter of Rabbi Avraham Schneerson, who was the granddaughter of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe. During the week's celebration that followed the wedding ceremony, his father, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber, announced the founding of Tomchei Temimim, the Lubavitch Yeshiva system, which I'm a product of. And the following year, he appointed his son to be the executive director. It was there, in the hamlet of Lubavitch, in pre-Soviet White Russia, that the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, trained the army of his faithful torchbearers, the students, under impossible conditions of the decades to come, that would literally give their lives up to keep the flame of Jewish life ablaze throughout the Soviet Union during that time. Upon his father's passing in 1920, the previous Rebbe assumed the leadership of the Russian Jewry, just as communism's all-out war on Jewish life was moving into high gear. His fight to preserve Judaism was characterized by his all-consuming Mesiras Nefesh. He had an unequivocal, selfless devotion to the physical and spiritual needs of his fellow Jew, and an unshakable faith in what he stood for. Guess what, my friends? There's a whole history of the people he dispatched teachers and these rabbis to furthest reaches of the Soviet Union to establish a vast underground network of schools, mikvahs, and a lifeline of material and spiritual support. Stalin's henchmen did everything in their power to stop him. And as I pointed out, in 1927 he was arrested, beaten, sentenced to death and exile, but he stood his ground, and by force of international pressure, he was finally allowed to leave the country. But in leaving the boundaries of the Soviet Union, he left his emissaries and the infrastructure of Jewish life behind. And these continued to function and thrive, preserving it and even spreading the teachings of Torah and Hasidism to this very day. When the all-powerful communist regime began to crumble in the closing years of the 80s, it was the previous Rebbe's network of children's schools, outreach centers, and supply lines of kosher food and religious services simply moved out of the cellars and the attics into the emptied Communist Party buildings. Yep. And you go today, amazing synagogues and organizations and day camps. And I just recently, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, who is the chief rabbi of Russia, Rabbi Ber Lazar, most recently celebrated his daughter's wedding. And there were over 2,000 people who came from all over the world, right in Moscow. Can you imagine? Comparing what happened now into what happened in the 20s. So upon arriving, the previous Rebbe in New York, after his rescue from the Nazi-occupied Warsaw in 1940, the previous Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, who then took up residence at 770 Eastern Parkway, that famous address, he took on a no less formidable challenge. So to speak, the frigid spiritual atmosphere of the Western world. And there was no telling Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak that this was a losing battle. In fact, many people suggested, now you've gone through all what you've done beforehand, why didn't you retire and take it easy? And he said the famous words, and from his wheelchair, because he'd gone through terrible times in during his incarceration, he rallied the Jewish young of America under the cry that America is nicht anders. America is no different. That also in this bastion of materialism, the timeless truths of Torah can take root and flourish. He established yeshivas and day schools, a publishing house for Jewish books, a social service organization, community support networks throughout the country. By the time of his passing in 1950, he had laid the foundation for the global renaissance of Torah and Hasidic-flavored Jewish life, which was to be heralded by his son-in-law, our Rebbe, and his successor, the Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. So, dear friends, a lot to be thankful for on many levels this coming week, July 4th, and then, of course, the end of the week, Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz, on a more spiritual level as well. And, of course, the Rebbe created a huge empire of shluchim, shluchais, emissaries who take up their positions around the world now. And as you know, you all know the rest of the story. And here, Baruch Hashem, in our little piece of the pie of wonderful Mineola and surrounding communities, we ask Hashem to continue to bless us with success as we move forward into the coming months and year to continue what the Rebbe wanted. The Rebbe's living legacy, his marching orders, was for us to continue to grow from strength to strength and make every effort. And that was really part of the reason why, in close proximity to the Rebbe's yard site, and which was last week, the 23rd anniversary, was to make this statement about going over the edge and to remember that all of us have an amazing ability to stand by others and to be there, to catch those who do fall over the edge and make sure to support them with Avos Yisrael, with care, material, spiritual success. Everyone who came, by the way, went home with a wonderful bag, which was inscribed, and inside there was 32 ounces of kosher chicken soup, fresh, real soup, none of this bologna stuff with the cubes, and Shabbos candles and challahs and some other souvenirs to remember the event, and all of us to remember the importance of helping those who actually do fall over the edge. A quick thought, the idea of being careful of who we are. Everybody wants to have the state-of-the-art kitchen and state-of-the-art phones, and, they tell of a rep on the road who had broken all records for sales in his company. When asked the secret of his success, He explained that the first thing he said when someone opens the door, "Did you see what your neighbor, Mrs. Jones, just got?" And that trick never failed. And this was never a Jewish ethic, however. We are taught differently. And our value system is relevant then as it is today. Privacy, modesty, discretion are all characteristics of ourselves. And as we read in the Torah portion, when Bilam raised his eyes, he saw something unique about the way we lived. What was so special about the Israelites dwelling their tents? Rashi offers one of the commentaries that the doorways of Israelites' tents in the wilderness were arranged so that they did not face each other. That way, one person was not able to see into his neighbor's tent, and their privacy was protected. In fact, this is one of the explanations of the famous praise that we say. I said this morning, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov. Every day when we walk into the synagogue, we say the words, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob." Here was this prophet, Bilam, who was extolling this virtue in their town planning, so to speak, whereby they took precautions in safeguarding their modesty and protecting their personal family lives from the would-be busybodies and the peeping toms, otherwise known as yentas and nudniks. But another understanding of the greatness of not looking into your neighbor's tent is don't look into your neighbor's tent to help decide what you should be doing. Your decisions in life should be not based on what other people are or doing or not doing. Certainly not what your neighbors have or do not have. A lot of social workers today will painfully testify that family breakdowns are often a result of financial difficulties and stress that's put onto marriages. And many of these stresses are self-imposed. Their clients confess that they didn't really need that new kitchen or the new car, but once their friends were moving up in the status stakes, they felt under pressure to maintain their social standing, whether it's in the kitchen, in the car, in the vacation, or the latest digital technology. If we allow ourselves to be judged by other people's criteria, we lay ourselves open to a lot of unnecessary stress. So, dear friends, I share this with you, that let us remember who we are. We're all individuals. We can make such a difference. And how much resentment, bitterness, and disappointment we could avoid if we didn't try to measure ourselves by other people's standards. We have our own standards. We have our own uniqueness. We'd be much happier people if we looked into ourselves and achieved what we could and should without drawing comparisons with others. And that's really what I conclude with, dear friends, today. If we truly want to enjoy the blessings of goodly tents, our own home, or even just good housekeeping, let's keep our eyes and our nose in our own tent. Then we will certainly be content as well. Not only our own tent, but content. I hope you got that, my dear friends. As you see, dear friends, I'm in a wonderful mood, Baruch Hashem. Thanking Hashem for the success of this week. We celebrated one of our grandchildren's bar mitzvah, and we want to take the opportunity to wish everybody listening and all your families many simchas of good health and prosperity and success. And at the same time, let us know if you know anybody who is in a shut-in, in a nursing home, or just in a house, whatever, an apartment, who is all by themselves, lonely, and, so to speak, are going over the edge because they don't have anybody or family or anybody who care or support system. Give us a call. That was my point. We're going to be making a tremendous effort to identify those. We have Malka Kipnis, who helps us tremendously in helping men and women in a jail. That they are not forgotten. They have gone over the edge, but they have a softer landing because, thanks to Malka, they have grape juice and challah. And there are many others who we know need to be reached out to. So please call us at 516-739-3636. We'll be happy to help. This is your host, Rabbi Pearl, thanking Hashem, thanking you, dear friends. Sei gesund, a gut Jahr. Have a wonderful July 4th and into the week.